Hey Worlds Collide podcast fans, it's Mark here from the Inside the Mix podcast. Follow me or find out more on Apple Podcasts. Just search for Inside the Mix, music production and mixing tips for music producers and independent artists. You're listening to the Worlds Collide podcast, and here's your host, Victoria.
Hi, and welcome to a new episode of Worlds Collide, the podcast about moving abroad. And I'm your host, Victoria. And I want to say that I appreciate so much that you're here today and listen to my podcast. So first things first, I just wanted to say that if you really like my podcast, then why don't you push the follow button in the corner of your app? And then you will always get a notification when a new episode drops. Also, if this is not too much to ask for, if you want, why don't you give my podcast a 5-star rating wherever you listen to it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify? That would help immensely to get a bigger audience. And since this episode is about Germany, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about this blog I contributed to. So it's called germanytravel.blog, and I contributed a little bit about the food part. So it's the best traditional German foods revealed by 25 German bloggers. Well, I'm not a blogger, but my family runs a restaurant in Germany. So I just gave them a little bit of information about foods that you really should try. And you will find the link to this in my show notes. Again, it's called the germanytravel.blog by the wonderful Minuka. Okay, and now to this week's episode. My guest is Steph or Stephanie. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it because she's from England and she moved to Germany, to Bavaria. So that's in the south. So we talk a lot about the things that she was struggling with, what was particularly hard for her in the beginning or like still. So if you are somebody who is also struggling with a lot of things because you moved to a new place, then I think you will find some comfort in this episode. Because, of course, it's not always just having a good time. Things are hard to adjust to. But also, I want to say that this episode is not just negative. It is also good, you know? It has a lot of things that she really likes and what she really appreciates. So, yeah. Definitely wait for this interview. And I also just wanted to give you a quick FYI because Sarah from a few episodes comes up in this talk. So if you want to hear more, just go back like 3 episodes. It's Sarah from Germany to London, and she talks more about like how to make friends abroad. Here's Steph. So my guest today is Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. Welcome to my podcast. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good too. Thanks for being here.
No worries.
So first question, where are you from?
So I am from a small city in England originally called Hereford. It's on the border between England and Wales, so it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And but I've been living in Bavaria in Germany since 2019, so about 4.5 years now.
Okay, in Bavaria in Germany, so close to the Alps?
A little bit. So I live, to be precise, I live in Augsburg.
Okay.
So it's kind of in the middle of Bavaria, I guess. So we're about an hour from the Alps, give or take, depending on traffic. Yeah.
And close to Munich?
Yeah, about 45 minutes from Munich.
That's really close.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what brought you there?
So actually it was my boyfriend, my partner. He got this opportunity to come to Germany for a contract work position.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of us had ever lived abroad before. He in particular hadn't really done much traveling before.
Okay.
And we were kind of just at a point, like I was at a point in my job where I either needed to quit or be promoted, or like I was at like a bit of a crossroads with where I was going. So we kind of went, okay, let's do it. If we don't do it now, we may never get the chance to do it again.
Yeah.
So we just went, okay, and then we just gave up our house and moved to Germany with the intention of being here for, I don't know, 4 to 6 months as a kind of
Okay.
experience. Yeah, and as I said, almost 5 years later, and we're
Yeah.
still here.
And so do you remember how was your process when you first decided, hey, we maybe we can move to Germany, and then that you actually did?
Okay, so I don't really do anything by halves. So
Uh-huh.
when my boyfriend said, "Yeah, okay, I'll come try out the job," they flew him over for an interview for the job, and he did it. He came for a week by himself. Flew back to England and said, "Yeah, I really like it. I think I'm going to take the job." At that
Uh-huh.
point, he was self-employed in England, so he did not have to give
Okay.
any notice period, nothing. There was no long drawn out kind of admin thing to do.
Yeah.
So we had 6 weeks
Okay, so
between saying yes and moving. So it was a really, really fast thing. And in that time, we had to find an apartment. I was trying to look for jobs. I'd done a bit of German way back in school, but
yeah.
I actually took French. I apologize for my
Yeah.
exams. And so I had to start learning German and all of this kind of stuff. It was chaos for 6 weeks.
Sure.
Yeah.
And how is it in England? So I guess you rented,
We
and
were renting, yeah.
like what is like the process there? Like how much notice do you have to give?
I think it's a little bit easier in the UK than in Germany. So we only had to give 1 month notice.
Ah, okay. So you were on time
Yeah.
on that. So
Yeah, super,
not
super
like
quick. And luckily we had a really great landlady in the UK. And
uh-huh.
she was really like, we were renting directly through her instead of through like an agency or something. So
Sure.
again, it was a very short chain to go through.
That was an easy part, and that was great.
Yeah.
And then how was your first reaction when you got there?
First reactions were, oh my God, this place is beautiful. And I do think we possibly got spoiled. Neither of us had ever been to Germany at all before. So I had
Ah, okay.
never, had no idea what to expect apart
Mhm.
from the cliches of German
Yeah,
people
yeah,
that I kind
yeah.
of knew. And I guess to some extent, moving to Bavaria probably fulfilled those cliches because
Right.
in my head, like German people were lederhosen and dirndls and pretzels and beer, and you come to Bavaria and it's
And that's what
kind of
it is.
quite similar to
Okay.
that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, first impressions were that it's a beautiful place, and I mean, there's a lot of money in Bavaria. I think it's a very rich state, and you can kind of
Mhm.
see they preserve a lot of the buildings really, really well, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful.
Nice architecture. The
Yeah.
I don't know, what do you call it, those houses? The ones with I mean, I don't even know what kind of buildings there are. Those the ones with the black beams outside.
Yeah, so I mean, in England, I guess we would just always refer to them as like alpine
Alpine
houses,
houses,
just
yeah.
yeah, because that's
Yeah.
the image you associate, like them being in the mountains and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. So how was your process of settling in?
yeah, we had a relatively easy time of it, I think, and also that was part of the reason that we made when we made the decision. This
Uh-huh.
was also part of the reason is that a few years prior to that, the people of Britain had voted for Brexit.
Right.
I was not one of those people. I
Mm.
voted to remain in the EU, um, and then it hadn't actually gone through, so it was due to go through. I think it eventually went through in
I mean, it
2021 or
took
something like that. It
forever.
took
Do you
so
remember
long
do
to
you
happen.
remember, like, all these, like, votes, like, and, like, you went through so many prime ministers and
Amendment.
whoa.
Oh, yeah, too many prime ministers.
Oh my god.
Um, and so we said, okay, if we go now, we can go and we're still European Union citizens. So we had not that much paperwork or admin stuff to go through. We had no visas,
Right.
yeah, nothing like that. So it was super easy, and settling in was definitely difficult, I think, in Germany, just because, first of all, it was the first time I ever lived abroad.
Mhm.
And it's a country that relies so much on bureaucracy and admin
Yeah,
and doing it in person as well.
right. And did you just sorry to interrupt, but did your boyfriend's work provide an apartment in the
No.
beginning? Oh, so you had to. Where did you stay in the beginning?
So again, I think I'm constantly grateful for how privileged and lucky we got. Um, the person who moved my boyfriend, or who suggested this job to my boyfriend, his best friend lives just, they're our neighbors. Basically, they have a
Mhm.
house in the building
Okay.
next door, and his wife is a freelance journalist,
Uh-huh.
so she sort of knows everybody and kind of knows what's going on in town. And she had heard that there was this apartment right next to them that had come up for rent. It was available. Luckily, the guy is so kind, so lovely, didn't mind renting to foreigners at all. And actually, between our landlord and my neighbor, they took us through the entire process of the Anmeldung and
Mhm.
everything. They helped us do everything.
Okay, the
And
registration
that is
and everything.
not a common experience for people that move to Germany, I don't think.
Yeah, well, it depends probably where you're from. Sorry, but it's
Yeah.
true. Um, so they helped you with this. So you found a place
Yeah.
and everything, and then so your boyfriend, I'm so used to
Yeah.
saying husband, sorry, but your boyfriend then he had to work right away. What about you?
I did not. And that was very difficult for me because that was the first time I started working when I was 14, not full time, but
Yeah,
I had a job in a pub, in a bar and stuff, where I would
sure.
do washing
Yes.
up and stuff after
Mm-hmm.
school. Um, and then even at university, I was still working because in the UK we have such high student fees, not as high as the States, I don't think, but still
But
it's
still, yeah.
expensive. And then I went straight from university into full-time work. And then I
Mm-hmm.
suddenly had, I think it was 6 months total where I was unemployed.
Uh-huh.
That was hard.
That was hard. Like, it's total life changing. I mean,
Yeah.
at this moment, it's like, what do you do with all this free time?
Yeah. And especially I think I'm so fiercely independent as a person.
Mhm.
It was the first time I ever relied on somebody else's money
Right.
to support me, and that
Mhm.
I really did not like that. I'm stubborn, and I don't like other people doing stuff for me.
Yeah, I understand that. So what was then your process of finding work?
That
Did
so I applied to I immediately started looking for work even before we moved here. The
Uh-huh.
problem was I didn't speak any German,
Right, okay.
and at that time, unless you lived really in Berlin, Hamburg,
Mhm.
maybe Frankfurt, somewhere like that,
Yeah, you need German.
you needed German. And I understood that to some extent. And of course, I immediately threw myself into German classes and learning German.
Okay.
Um, but it was still difficult. So I applied to over 200 jobs, I
Oh,
think it
wow.
was.
Uh-huh.
Um, I got 3 interviews, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
And not a single job offer from those
Okay.
interviews. What happened was, I my neighbor again, the freelance journalist,
Uh-huh.
happened to be interviewing the CEO of a company, a local company. That CEO, she was also a refugee when she first moved to Germany as a
Uh-huh.
child. So
Okay.
she was very, supportive of finding work for foreigners and kind of supporting where they could. And it just
Mhm.
so happened that she had acquired a smaller company who wanted to be kind of the international branch of her company.
Okay.
So they needed somebody who spoke English to deal with the
Yeah.
international
Yeah,
clients
yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
also the employees and everything. So I got super lucky, and she offered me a position, and that was
Nice.
how I ended up getting a job.
Oh, nice. So you were lucky and that all worked out. You
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
still with them?
I'm not, no. So I'm now on my fourth job, I think, here.
Okay.
um, no, third job here.
Okay.
So I changed. So I was kind of just doing, admin-y pieces for them.
Uh-huh.
Um, I had a lot of free time still, especially during COVID, because I went on to
Okay,
short working
sure.
time.
Mhm.
And my boyfriend worked away at that point because he also moved on and found a different job. He was working away during the week. So I really did a lot of self-discovery during that
Mhm.
period and figured out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. And I knew that I wanted to move into kind of a more creative digital role, social
Okay.
media, marketing, writing. What I've
Uh-huh.
always really wanted to do would be to be a writer. So I put a lot of work into that, and then I eventually found a role. Again, the role when I got offered it was from an Instagram friend.
Mhm.
A girl, to this day, I've still never met her. She is an American living in Hamburg, and she was working for an agency at that time and said, "Hey, we're looking. Come join
Uh-huh.
us," kind of thing. Um, but actually, my original boss was super understanding, super kind. He understood everything, and the CEO also understood that. And even now, whenever I see them quite often in the street. We stop, we say
Sure.
hello, we
A
have a
small
chat. So
town, yeah.
it was really a really lovely way. And I still, if anyone's ever looking for jobs, I always happy to recommend them as a company to go work for.
Yeah, okay, so you left in good terms.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and so how is your German now?
It got very good, I would say. Well, I was taking B2 level classes at one
Uh-huh.
point. Um, but the problem is the last two jobs that I've had have been in very international environments
Okay, so you
where
spoke English.
the working language is English and
Uh-huh.
often the client language is also English. And that's not a problem. Obviously, that's great for me. I'm a native English speaker. But for my German skills, yeah, it means the only chances I really get to speak English is like when I go to the supermarket or I go out in the street and just see people or go to restaurants. So it's very basic level. I would say my understanding of German is far, far higher than my speaking level right
Ah,
now.
okay. But are you, confident?
I'm confident. And once I get into it, I actually last year did a trade show for the current company that I work for. And that was almost entirely in German. And I was
Mhm.
terrified to start
Yeah.
with. But after a couple of hours of hearing it constantly and having to speak it because people didn't speak English, it comes back when you are thrown into an environment where you have no other option but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to speak a new language or a second language. Then it comes somehow. It just comes out.
Yeah, and what always helps me at least, just a little drink, it's like, and
Yeah,
then
the
it's like,
confidence.
okay, now exactly, confidence. No, I don't care if I make a mistake. I just talk,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah. So was your town where you're from in England about the same size as Augsburg?
It's much smaller. So
Ah,
Augsburg. So
okay.
I actually live. People who are from Augsburg will hate me because I always say
Yeah.
I'm from Augsburg, but I actually live in a small town just outside of Augsburg.
Ah, okay.
I spend most of my time in Augsburg as a city. So I think Augsburg is about 250,000 people, I think.
Okay.
Um, but Hereford, where I'm from, when I left, was about 50 or 60,000 people. So
Ah, okay.
really small city.
Yeah, really small. And so how do people where you are now, react to you being from England?
I have to say, it's mostly good. Rarely do I get any people react in a kind of a negative way. People are so,
Mhm.
all of our neighbors and the local people are really warm and friendly, and really encouraging as
Okay.
well.
Uh-huh.
The staff in our local supermarket, they've kind of seen us grow from when we first moved here. And
Sure. Yeah.
they always, whenever I see them, whenever I go to the supermarket, they always compliment me. Oh, your German's getting better. And oh, yeah, it's great.
Okay, sure. I mean, you're well known in a small town, right?
Yeah,
Like, oh yeah, the English people again.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. What are for you the main differences?
I think the culture is in some ways very similar, but in a lot of
Mhm.
ways really not. And for me, I guess I really like the slower pace of life here, and I don't know if that is a particularly Bavarian thing. Because of my old job, I had to go to Berlin about once a month, and
Uh-huh.
I love Berlin. I fell in love with the city the second I stepped off the train. But I would never live there. It's one of those places where I love going back and I love being there for a few
Mhm.
days, but I'm very happy in small town Bavaria.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I find the pace of life much slower. Other differences, I think, yeah, the language, the working culture, I think is generally much more formal. But I am seeing that
Mhm.
change as we, over the past 5 years since living here, more and more startups are coming here. English is becoming much more ingrained in working life now and is becoming less formal.
And do you in England, do you refer to the people you work with as like Mr. or Mrs. or with a first name like in America?
Always first name. Yeah,
Because in Germany it's like Frau
exactly.
Schmidt. Even if she's like the same age as you are, right? It's
Yes, yeah, exactly. And that took a long time to get used to being called kind of Mrs. Montague by everybody, by people on the same level as me, by my boss, yeah, by everyone. And that took a while because in England, yeah, it's always first name.
and for you to refer to the other people as Frau oder Herr,
Yeah, yeah, that was also
yeah,
quite
like to call them.
quite
Yeah.
strange as well. But I kind of, to some extent, I do quite like it. For example, in general, when you're talking to like when I talk to my neighbors, they're most of them are older than me by
Mhm.
quite some years, I would say. Um, and it's nice because it's a sign of respect, I think, in that sense, like a sign of respecting
Yeah.
your elders, kind of thing, by referring to them by
Mhm.
Mr. or Mrs. Although they now insist that I call them by their first names.
Uh-huh.
Now we've been here a little while, but yeah, instead of going straight into that informal friendliness straight away, it takes
Yeah,
a little
uh-huh.
while to build up with Germans, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like it, the first names, but like for strangers, I get it. For like people you don't really know, or for like your boss or somebody.
Mm,
But for example, like somebody who works right beside you, your level, your age.
yeah.
I don't know. I feel I'm like always like I don't know what to say. I'm confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what do you miss from back home?
um, I miss my friends. Um,
Mhm.
Probably the most. I miss. Hmm, I'm slightly nostalgic, I guess, for the life that I left a little bit. Everything was easier in
Every
England. Um,
And why would you say that? Because of the language or
of course, yeah, the language, it was my native tongue, and everybody spoke it. I am an R. I go up and down about bureaucracy because I think in Germany it is more bureaucratic.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't think there's necessarily more to do in some senses. In England, if you're self-employed, you still have to do a tax return, or you can still do one if you're employed and you want to get some money back from the government.
Mhm.
And you still have to go through the same process of filling in all the forms and proving how much money you earned. And that's similar in Germany. There's just, I think, more scary letters in Germany from the
Yeah.
Finanzamt.
Yeah, yeah.
um, but I think, yeah, obviously the language, and just when you grow up, when you're born and raised in a place, you kind of just know how stuff works, and
Sure.
you know what you can do and what you can't do. So of course, sometimes I wish, not wish, but I just miss that kind of life. But I also think I moved at a really weird age. I think I moved when
Oh,
I was 26.
okay.
Um, and so I'm now 31. And when you're 26, I feel like those few years between like 25 and 30 are really like pivotal aging years. They really, I don't know, a lot of work happens in those few years, I think. And then on top of that, I moved to a new country and learned a new language. And on top of that, we had a global pandemic in the middle.
Yeah.
And so I often like think like now I think, am I integrating into Germany, or am I getting older? Or is it because of the pandemic that I've changed my manners and the way that I am? And I'm
Yeah, okay.
sometimes a bit confused as to, do I miss it, or am I just growing older?
Right. But also, I mean, you don't know how your life would be back in England if you were there right now, because like
Yeah.
the pandemic would have happened. And then also, as you said, like you were not happy in your job. So maybe that would have caused like some uncertainty too.
Well, funnily enough, so I was on the verge of quitting my full-time job back in England to become a full-time personal trainer and fitness instructor.
Ah, okay.
And had I done that in the September 2019, and then the pandemic hit, of course, the gyms were
Mm-hmm.
the first place to close
Yeah.
down.
It's close.
And I sometimes think, God, if I had done that, I would have just not had a job, not been able to pay rent,
Yeah,
not had anything.
right. Yeah, were you ever like wondering doing that after the pandemic in Germany?
I wasn't until recently. So I kind of stopped doing fitness. I put on a lot of weight when I moved to Germany. Um, the pretzels and beer got to me.
The pretzels and beer. Okay, I was like, why? Because of the pandemic, maybe because nobody went out, or okay, pretzels and beer. Okay.
Partly, I think partly that. I think, yeah, I suffered a lot with mental health during the pandemic
Uh-huh.
and after, and there were a lot of factors that went into that. But also because when we moved to Germany, I was like, okay, I want to try
Yeah,
everything, and I fell in love with Butterbretter and beer,
yeah. I mean,
and it happens
too many
slowly.
carbs.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it is good. I mean, the pretzels, yes, I love them too.
Oh, so good.
With a lot of butter, yes. Yeah. So, what else do you really like though in Germany?
I really like that most places are closed on a Sunday.
Oh wait, so you in England have the stores open on Sundays?
Yes, yeah.
See, I'm never sure because, like, for me, like in Europe in general, are all the closed
Yeah.
stores closed on Sunday? Just because, like, I'm so used to it, so I just always assume if in Germany are the stores closed, they're everywhere else in Europe closed.
Yeah. Well, actually,
Oh,
so I
okay.
remember it was in the mid to late 90s. So the stores used to be closed on Sundays, and then it
Uh-huh.
was, yeah, when I was a kid. It was a big deal. They started opening on Sundays, and to begin with, I think it was like 4 hours on a Sunday they were open, and then it just
Uh-huh.
gradually we've gone more and more the way of the US, to where they're just kind of open all day
All
now.
the time, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. 'Cause then and I remember, like, when the stores started to open longer on a Saturday, because when I was a kid, the stores in Germany, they were closed or they were open until, like, 1 or 2 PM
Yeah.
on Saturdays, and then it was a big deal when they opened until 6 PM.
Yeah, and that's what's funny is in the small town that I live in, the stores on a Saturday are still only open until lunchtime, and then everything closes. But in Augsburg, they're open, yeah, longer. It's a bigger city.
Small stores, yeah, I bet, in small
Yeah,
towns.
yeah. So I actually really like that, and that's, I know, especially with people that come from the US to move to Germany, they really struggle with that adjustment.
Yeah, I bet, mhm.
But it's kind of, it forces you. It's a day where you're like, okay, well, I have to go see my friends and socialize, or just relax and rest my brain
Right.
or my body, and just do things
Yes.
for me, spend time with family, all of this kind of stuff. I really like
Yeah,
that.
you kind of don't stress about your errands. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you usually do on Sundays?
It varies. I usually like to go for a walk, or a hike. Sometimes we go. My boyfriend is a huge motorsport fan,
Mhm.
and by default, so am I now. I never intended
Uh-huh.
to be, but
Yeah.
we've been together for 12 or 13 years now. So it's just kind of ended up being part of my life as well. So sometimes we'll go and find, a rally event or a hill climb or some kind of race is
Okay.
happening.
Yeah. But you do like fun things on Sundays. And I mean
Yeah.
also like the cafes are open, so you can like go out and see friends and go get a nice
Yeah,
cafe und
exactly.
Kuchen.
Yeah, I said a
Yeah.
friend of mine who she lives in the city. She's also English, actually, but also lives here. And we started last year on a Sunday. We would meet each other. We would go for a long run, and
Mhm.
then we would go get breakfast together afterwards. And that was really just
Yeah,
like
nice.
most of Sunday how I spent it, and I really loved that.
That sounds lovely. I mean, that's a great way of spending our time. How was it then for you to make friends?
It was hard.
Oh, yeah?
Especially with the pandemic, when the pandemic kind of came about. So making friends online was very easy for me, and
Okay.
I
Mhm.
said to you that I have lots of friends that I made on Instagram when I first moved here,
Uh-huh.
and we really had this connection. And actually, a lot of those I've gotten to meet in real life, which is
Mhm.
amazing. But yeah, to actually make friends here was difficult. We had our German neighbors who were very good with us, and we're still very good friends with them. But
Mhm.
there is a kind of slight age gap, not a huge age gap, I think 10 to 15 years, but
Okay, but
they
that is an age gap.
they are also married and they have a kid. And so there's
Yeah,
like
okay.
just slightly different priorities, I guess, that they have in their lives than we have in
Yeah.
ours. But actually, it was my friend Beth, who's the other English girl that I know here. She's much more outgoing than I am, and
Mhm.
she sort of harassed me on Instagram until I went for a walk with her one day, and then from her, I
Okay.
managed to meet a lot more people in Augsburg, and now I have this really great group of international friends. Most of us are foreigners living here, but there are a few
Uh-huh.
Germans as well who are, kind of internationally minded German people, or their
Okay.
partners are foreign as well, and so yeah, we have a really great group of people now.
Okay, so you just met, like, the right person who introduced you to more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is great, yeah. My last interview, it hasn't, like, streamed yet, but, she's a German girl, and she moved to England, but she's a friendship coach,
Ah, Sarah.
because oh,
I
you know her?
know.
Yeah.
Also an Instagram pal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I just talked to her, like, the other day,
Mhm.
and oh, okay, so I was like, "Okay, so well, she has great tips." But yeah, so she said, like, you don't always need to you don't necessarily need, like, a person from abroad to become your friend because those people always move away really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I
Yeah.
think, but there are the few of us that are really good friends. Lots of them have already been here for 10 years, 11 years,
Okay.
and or are married to Germans, and that's how they ended up here. So it's
I see, so they stay. It's not that they're gonna move away.
yeah, yeah. But I am trying to have more German friends.
I know, but I I am sure this is not as easy, especially like I don't know, like maybe like a language barrier is there?
The language barrier, somewhat. Although I think most especially younger Germans these days do speak
Yeah.
relatively good English, even if they say they don't. That's a very common
Yeah,
theme.
yeah,
They'll
yeah.
say they speak a little bit of English, and then it's like better than mine. um,
Yeah.
but I think just in general, Germans are tougher cookies to crack. I can't remember
Okay,
where I
okay.
read it, whether it was online or in a book. I've just finished reading a book called The Culture Map, which is about kind of international relationships at work.
Uh-huh.
But somebody said that Germans are like coconuts. So you have this kind of hard shell and you have to tap through. But then once
Okay.
you get in there, once you get inside, it's,
Yeah.
gooey and lovely, and they'll
Yeah,
be your
yeah.
friend for life. So that is difficult, but I'm trying.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's like yeah, I mean, because I always like I compare it to making friends here or just like having a conversation with like a stranger in Germany. I feel like this is not possible. I mean, there is not like small talk, but like if somebody, for example, you meet somebody at the bar and you get along and whatever, you have like a nice conversations, you become friends.
Yeah.
And here it's like whatever, you talk to anybody, have like a nice conversations, but then like you're still not friends. Like you're not gonna hang out or anything.
Yeah, and that's funnily enough, that's also one of the things that was in this book I was just reading, that in the States, and I think in the UK to some extent, you can have really seemingly like amazing friendly conversations with people, but then that doesn't mean that you're friends with them. And I find that quite
Yeah.
nice about the Germans, is that they're honest, right? And they're direct. And so once you
Mhm.
become friends with them, um, that's really them really saying that they like you, and really wanting to be part of your life, and then really making an effort.
Exactly. I think so too, because for me this was like here was like when I had a nice conversation. Of course, this person is my
Yeah.
friend, you know. And then like, who are you? And what is something that is hard for you to get used to?
I think the language. Yeah, the language was probably, I mean, the language and the bureaucracy, just that things take longer here in terms of the bureaucracy. I
Ah,
don't mind so much having to go and see a person. It would be amazing if everything was digital. And I think that's probably the most
mm,
complained about thing, not just by
yeah,
immigrants here, but also by Germans themselves. Um,
by German and the German media,
exactly. Um,
and that you still use faxes.
this year they are phasing them out, I believe.
Oh
It was
my
in the news
god!
at the end of last
Finally.
year. But yeah, I had to learn to use a fax machine when I moved to Germany. I had never. I
Oh,
was born
I
in
bet. I bet.
1992, so I just missed like the fax era. I remember dial-up internet, but really I grew up with the internet. So yeah, when I first moved here, I had to learn how to use a fax machine.
So complicated. Why? And then also like why I is like a fax, like an official document, or it's like okay, acceptable, but like whatever emailed photocopy is not. You know?
Yeah, or my favorite is, so the where you go register the car. Our office from there last year, they went digital, and by that they mean that you can download a PDF form from their website, but you still have to print it off and take it to the office. And that for them was going digital.
Oh wow. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I mean honestly like at this time I feel this is kind of embarrassing.
But it's something, I think it's like just a running, like it is annoying, but
It is a running gag,
it's just a
right?
running gag now. And I think we just know,
Yeah.
and people that have been here for a little bit now, you just know that that's just how it is. That's Germany. And
I know, but I
it would be
mean
nice to.
I mean, I think like all the people that are used to it, they're like now at retiring age.
Yeah.
So I feel like everybody else in the workforce or like who has a saying in whatever politics, they should make a bigger effort of whatever.
Driving it forward. Yeah. I think
Yes.
so. I think so. Um, yeah, but I think the language is for me. The language was particularly, or is always particularly difficult because it is somewhat similar. So English is a Germanic
Mhm.
language, and there are lots of words that look the same but maybe pronounced slightly differently,
Yeah.
or these false friend words.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
a good
uh-huh.
example, actually, I'm having a lot of work done on my jaw right now. So I had surgery at the beginning of the year, and I have braces put on in a few
Uh-huh.
weeks' time. So I have my orthodontist. He speaks fluent English,
Uh-huh.
but I told him I want to speak more German. So I want to try harder. So last time I was there, we were talking German with each other, but I tried to tell him that I was getting better, or the pain was going quickly. Um, and I said, yeah, das geht fast, because in my head
Um,
it goes fast, which means quickly
Fast,
in English, but obviously in German it means like almost.
almost. Yeah.
Luckily, he knew what I meant, and we could laugh about it. But yeah, sometimes things like that really trip me up.
And, what about the accent? Because the people or the area has, like, a strong accent.
Yeah, funnily enough, it's now I understand it now. Mostly, I think
Oh, okay.
sometimes you get older people from Augsburg where the accent is particularly thick. But
Mhm.
now I really am getting much better with that, with the Augsburg accent. The one I still cannot get is like the really mountain Bavarian accent.
I bet. I
So my
bet.
boyfriend used to work near Rosenheim,
Mhm.
and so all of his friends are from that area, from the Rosenheim area, and their accents are ridiculous.
Yeah, they even roll their R's, right?
Yeah,
They're like
so much. Yeah, yeah. So it's sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. It depends. My favorite German accent is the Hamburg accent. I went there
Mhm.
once and it was amazing because I could understand everything. They spoke so
Okay, yeah.
clearly.
The area with the least accent is Hanover.
Ah, really? I never visited Hanover.
Uh-huh. I mean, me neither. Why would you? There is nothing there. I think it's supposed to be Germany's ugliest
Oh
city.
no. Maybe well, now I need to go. I need to see if this is true.
Yeah, exactly. But, apparently, like, this is like
A
Hochdeutsch.
proper, yeah, okay, maybe,
Yeah,
yeah.
uh-huh.
For me, yeah, but Hamburg for me was just not. I think there was still an accent there for sure, but
Yeah, there
it was
is. They have,
super
like, the Nordic
clear for
accent now.
me.
Yeah, but they still have a few words, but, I don't know. I feel like even, like, it sounds like slang.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything that you could recommend somebody who would think of moving to Germany?
In terms of,
What to
okay,
expect, like how to prepare.
I think it's getting easier with the language. I think it's if you speak English, it is in the 5 years I've been here, or almost 5 years, it has become more open in terms of the workforce, I would say, especially. But I still think learning the language will give you a huge boost, and it's a major plus.
Mhm.
It also, for me, like learning the language helps you understand the culture more. Um,
Mhm.
so if you really want to integrate into a place, then learning the language is a big plus from my side. I would say, yeah, still to expect the bureaucracy. Things are slow. As I understand it, I work with a lot. Most of the company I work for now is international, and so I see it very often. People come here, they're trying to find apartments. Um, they're trying to, yeah, register with insurances, get bank accounts, and of course you can't get a bank account unless you have an address. And sometimes you can't get an address or rent an apartment without a bank account because you need to pay a deposit. So things take time. And I think patience is important in Germany.
Would you say the Germans that are not your friends, but that you interact with like on a daily basis, still like whatever people in the store or people at an office or people at the library or who knows, but would you say they are friendly?
Um, in my experience, yes. Um,
Okay.
I don't know if it's Bavarians, if it's people from the Augsburg area in particular, if it's because I'm English. Um, I'm not sure, but in my experience, I've not had anything, where they've shouted at me and made me cry. And I know people who have had that experience in different cities here in Germany. So I would say,
Made you
yeah.
cry. Oh no. Okay, so but it's just because of the reputation and I know it's like going to what's the word? To an Amt?
Yeah,
To like any
like official government
like official
place.
government place, it's like you're greeted with like a grumpy face, you know? So
Yeah,
it's like, hey, why are you here? What do you want from me? You know? So this is the reputation, and I also had like this experience myself a few
yeah.
times.
I
But if
think,
you don't have that experience,
yeah,
then
and I think I don't know. Maybe I got super lucky, but I've never. When Brexit did officially happen, we had to go and get residency cards.
uh-huh.
Again, the process was incredibly easy for us.
Okay.
We didn't have to get visas because we are still protected by the withdrawal agreement. But we just
Uh-huh.
needed to get, before we didn't need residency, and now we do.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay,
but
okay.
that experience was amazing. It was super quick in terms of actually getting an appointment. We got an appointment, I think, 2 days after I called them. Um,
Uh-huh.
okay, it took 1 month for the paperwork to come and be all
That
sorted,
is nothing.
but that's quick,
A
right?
month is that is quick, yeah.
I know people that have waited 9 months for their visa appointment and then another like six
Yeah.
months to get the visa. So it was all really quick. I also don't know if some of it, I suffer very badly with anxiety. And what that does to me is it means I am somewhat over prepared for everything.
Mhm.
So, when I first went to the Amt, I knew first thing I had to go in and I had to tell them my name, and I had an appointment, my appointment number from the little email that I got. I had a folder
Mhm.
with all my paperwork ready, and
Mhm.
truly super over prepared because I
Prepared.
took paperwork that I didn't even need, and the guy was like, "I don't need this. I don't know why have you brought me this."
Uh-huh.
Um, so maybe that helps a little, and also I think as well, I'm a very positive person. I will always greet people with a big smile and stuff, and I think sometimes
Uh-huh.
that eases tensions. Yeah,
Yeah. All right, good. Good you had like no bad experience. And also, I mean, that is super quick for anything, like 1 month. And I wanted to ask you about the Brexit thing too. Is this like, do you get a lot of comments though? Like, hey, why did they vote for Brexit or something like that?
yeah. Not some. It's dying down a little bit now.
Yeah.
But when it was first happening, especially when like Boris Johnson was also prime minister during that period as well, we got a lot of questions and comments about that. And then also, of course, we went through, as you said earlier, we went through a bunch of different prime ministers for
Yeah.
whatever reason. So there were jokes made and comments and stuff about that, but not so much anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I understand it's like it also died down in the media. It's just not
Exactly.
as
Yeah.
present anymore. How often do you visit home?
During the pandemic, that was hard because I think for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, we didn't get to visit. Um,
Sure, and you were just there you were still very new
and we were still
there
new as
at the
well.
time. Yeah.
And also we really like, as I said, my boyfriend is a huge motorsport fan, he's a big car fan. And we both really like road trips. So
Uh-huh.
when possible, we actually really love to drive home. We love the road trip. We always drive north to avoid the French toll roads, so we don't have to pay. So we drive north, and then we go through Luxembourg and Belgium, and then into France that way, and get the ferry across.
Really nice.
And the problem we had was a couple of times during COVID, we could have gone home. We filled out all the paperwork, we had taken all the tests, and the French decided they were closing the borders at the last minute. So yeah, I lost a lot of money in 1 year due to all of that. But now in the last couple of years, last year I think we went 2 or 3 times back home. The year before I went 3 or 4 times, and I think my partner came 2 or 3. I went once by myself for sure. But this year, we're not sure this year when we're going to get to go, because we've dedicated this year to a lot more European travel. And we're also going to Brazil for Christmas this year. So I'm not sure when we're going to get, because my father lives in Brazil. So my father is not in the UK. He lives over there. And I have...
Maybe your father wants to be on my podcast.
Yeah, maybe.
I didn't have a Brazilian story yet, so
yeah. So he's married to a Brazilian lady, and I have a half Brazilian baby brother, who I've never met. So I'm determined to go and see him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's funny that, I mean, for you, it's like such a short flight. It's only like an hour.
Yeah.
But still, like, you dedicate a lot of your free time to go there. For us, it's the same. It's like all our vacation we save up just to go visit home.
Exactly.
And we never go anywhere else. I mean, sure, like short road trips we do, but like nothing, we're not going like on a major vacation somewhere else, because we spend all that time just visiting friends and family.
Exactly, yeah. And sometimes, it's amazing and it's wonderful to go home and to visit friends and family, sure. But it never really feels like a holiday. There's a certain point, like especially when you're staying with family and you're so used to living in your own space, that gets to a point where tensions start to rise and you start to become kind of exhausted with the whole trip. So this year we're trying to have kind of more holidays.
Yeah, you should. Absolutely. Because it's like, you don't have like me time. You don't go and see things that you really want to see, right? It's like, I'm just going to go there and whatever. I'll do the same thing what I used to do 5 years ago.
Exactly. And it's especially in the UK, I find it especially hard because the roads are very slow in the UK. And my boyfriend's family are all from the north of England, and my family are from Buckinghamshire, which is just outside London.
West.
But we're both from Hereford, which is on the border between England and Wales. So we have friends and family in Hereford. I've got family down near London. He has family up near Manchester, and so we just spend the whole time just driving up and down.
Right. Thank you for your time. Cool. Thank you for being on my podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
That was Steph's interview, everyone. She was kind of always circling back on bureaucracy and the language. So yeah, I mean, that is something that I guess Germany is very famous for. But come on, Germany, get rid of your fax machines. And I also just wanted to clarify, in the interview, I talk about Hochdeutsch. So this means like proper German, or like German, like clear German without an accent. So just to let you know. Also, if you want to hear more of Steph and her blog, she has one, and I make sure that you will find it in the show notes. It is called adventuresofsteffi.com. And yeah, you will find it in the show notes. Until then, I hope you liked this episode and you will tune in again next week with a new one. Okay, until then, bye.